Hi folks, so those of you who have been subscribed for any length of time will probably recognize this website. In fact, many of you who have only recently subscribed probably know what this website's all about because the title's right up there. But this is my NeoCities website. So NeoCities is a wonderful little web service that allows you to craft a website using HTML code directly through the content management system that it provides. There are also other ways of building websites for NeoCities that can be hosted on NeoCities. For example, you could use a website builder like Jekyll and then upload your website to NeoCities. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that before the end of the video. But first off, I do want to just draw your attention to this website. For those of you that don't know, I put a lot of supplementary information. For example, I put links to useful apps and websites and various different web services that I think are particularly useful to a large number of people. So in fact, I can even click on it now. And as you can see, it's a text-only website. So and then I've categorized all these wonderful, mostly open source tools. There are a couple of closed source web apps there that may be especially useful, but I've kept them to a minimum. And there are a few websites where you can get some online resources if you so require them. And then there are some Mastodon and Fediverse tools as well, which I've also come to find particularly useful myself, and others may also do so. And now there are a few other things as well. There's also a few notes that I jot down for Game of Thrones as well, but it's a little bit of a scrapbook. It's very informal in that regard. I've got a little bit of a code design journal as well that talks a little bit about my philosophy when it comes to approaching the design of this website. But as you can see, it is a very straightforward design. It's designed to put content right there before any kind of stylistic elements. It's got a nice little color scheme. It uses usually your system sans serif font as well. So it generally speaking looks the same on just about any computer that you can actually run this website on, and it also loads quite well on mobiles as well. It's just one of the benefits of having a simple website. It's also a very, very small website that can load incredibly quickly on just about any computer that you can load it up on. So, and this is, to me, this is my imagining of what a website really should be at the core of it, to be honest. So anyway, if you guys want to check it out, it's chrisware.uk. But today I want to talk just a little bit more about NeoCities. I've recently become a supporter. It's about time too as well. I've thrown over 100,000 views through their hosting service here, so it's about time I gave something back as well. And they give you a good illustration as to what you get for the free tier, also what you get for the supporter tier as well. So you get things like custom domains if you're a supporter. You get custom domain SSL certificates as well. You can create multiple sites, and there's a few things there as well. But specifically, there's WebDAV uploading, and WebDAV uploading is particularly interesting. I was trying that out today. Now, I'm quite happy just manipulating the website code through the content management system itself. In fact, this is my website. There's only a small number of files here. But for example, I can go into my index file, which is the main website, and then it will just simply load up the code into a theme of your choosing as well. And there it is, so you can just simply edit the code as you see fit. So, and then it just takes you back to the dashboard. And then you can use, of course, CSS to style the website. But in fact, if I even open up my CSS file, look, that's all the lines of code that I've got there for the CSS, which basically changes the font for the website. But if it doesn't have Liberation Sans, then it just reverts to the sans serif font of your operating system. It's got the background color, it's got the foreground color, it's got the color of links as well. And I've specifically decided to keep links underlined. I know that it's very trendy in web design to actually have links that underline when you hover over them, and it does kind of look a little bit neater. But I've been reading a little bit about brutalist web design and the idea behind it being functional first before aesthetically pleasing afterwards. And yeah, you can make a website look quite nice with a few basic tweaks to the color scheme, and that's really all you need. But having an underlined text to represent a link is a very universal way of presenting a link. It is accessible to people, for example, with color blindness or a lot of visual impairments as well. But it's also a standardized way of demonstrating what a link is as well, without people having to try and work out, what website text you can click on and what you can't. Just having it underlined is a very straightforward, very standardized way of doing it, and I can appeal to that. Also, for those of you wondering, this line at the top here, media only screen, that means that the stylistic elements, the theming of the website only applies to when it's shown on a screen. So if you actually wanted to print out my website, it would revert back to the very default theme, which is very printer friendly as well. So that's just a few ideas that I've put together there. But yeah, it's a wonderful little content management system that that provides a little bit of hosting as well. And as you can see here, this website is only 124 kilobytes, 0.0%, and it's got 129,000 views, going on 130 actually. That's quite a lot of views, and I think a lot of people do find the resources on it quite helpful as well, to be honest. It's just a small directory of a few things that I find useful. There are some command line or commands that I think I use from time to time that some of you guys might find useful as well. So if you do have a website, I do recommend becoming a supporter, because it does give you quite a lot, and it also supports one of the most sincere and useful pieces of technology that I've come across on the internet for quite some time, that it's a genuine tool that can actually bring the internet back to its roots. Like, how many websites are so laden with JavaScript and third-party pieces of code and fonts and all this, unnecessarily large images that get pulled down from goodness knows what server, when really, what you need is, like a website is a glorified text document. That's really what it is. You don't need anything more than a few tweaks for the color, for a bit of personal effect, but really, this is all you need in the vast majority of cases there. And in the case with the code design blog, I have of course narrowed the columns to make it easier to read. But there you go. And also my contents are all laid out right up front, and then you can go to other websites, and then if you want to go back to the contents, you just click back. It's just as easy as that. So one of the things that I was checking out is this WebDAV feature that they have that allows you to mount your NeoCities site as a folder on your computer. And I was looking through the instructions, and it says there are some caveats for Windows, there are some caveats for OS X, but for Linux there seems to be out-of-the-box support. Now, it does of course mention Ubuntu, and most documentation for this kind of thing does tend to default to Ubuntu, but then if you have the Ubuntu documentation for something, it isn't usually that difficult to sort of translate it across to another distribution if that's what you happen to be using. So what I've got here today is my file manager, which is of course Thunar, because I am running XFCE. I'm running Manjaro XFCE. Wonderful distribution. I really quite enjoy using it. It ticks all the boxes that I need to, yeah, it's great. I recommend it. I generally recommend it, but of course different distributions are different. They're suitable for different use cases. I'm certainly not one of those people that thinks that there is one best distribution over any others. It depends what your use case is, and also it depends on things like personal tech philosophy and all that kind of stuff as well. There's a lot of factors in play in choosing a distribution, but Manjaro is the one that I seem to have landed on. It's the one that seems to fit my use case the best in my opinion. Okay, so now what we can do is we can just select the URL there, copy it, go into our file manager, and then just paste it into the address bar. There we go. Now it will ask us for our username and password, so I'm going to put in my NeoCities username and password. I won't do that on camera for obvious security reasons. Okay, and once I've entered the password, it takes a few seconds to load up the contents of the folder, but there you go. You can see my my website as it appeared on the NeoCities content management system. So now what I can do is take, for example, the style.css file. I can open that with Pluma, which is my text editor. It'll take a few seconds to load up because it's got to, of course, pull it down from the NeoCities server. But there we go. And then we've got the CSS, the style.css file that I illustrated to you guys earlier on, and it's right here in my Pluma text editor. So that's kind of nice, and it makes, of course, uploading and downloading files particularly easy as well. So that is something that I did want to demonstrate to you guys today, because it's something that I was surprised how easy and straightforward it is. I didn't have to do anything with the operating system to get this to work. I literally just copy and pasted the URL into the address bar of Thunar, and it worked as well as I demonstrated to you on camera. There is literally nothing else I had to do. It was out of the box. There was out of the box support for it. Unlike, of course, it seems Windows and OS X, which do seem to require more advanced instructions. But yeah, one of the interesting cases where Linux is the most user-friendly out of the distributions in this particular regard. And when it comes to a lot of things, especially security-orientated things, I do actually kind of find that there's a lot more out-of-the-box support on Linux-based operating systems, whereas with Windows and OS X, you actually have to install specific third-party software to get the same kind of functionality. So that's kind of neat. So I think I'm going to leave you there, but do feel free to check out my website. I do tend to update it from time to time, but it's really there just as a static website to supplement a lot of the content that I put out on this channel, and almost as a sort of a rebellion against the bloated web, the idea that a website doesn't have to have tons and tons of JavaScript to, make it worthwhile. And in fact, that stuff more often than not just gets in the way. It makes it less accessible to more devices. It can often take longer to load. There's more to go wrong, and it sort of imagines a website as being more than it even needs to be and more than it is. HexDSL did a wonderful video, and I'll link to it down in the description, where he talks about Gopher and some of the sheer beauty of the minimalism that is Gopher, and it certainly got me interested in the protocol. So that's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, this website is sort of my answer to the rather bloated and unfortunate state of the World Wide Web right now. But before I leave you, there is something else that I would like to demonstrate. So as you can see here, I have a command line terminal. This is XFCE4 terminal. It's just the terminal that comes with my desktop environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate what my website looks like on a text-only browser, specifically the Lynx browser. So if I just type in Lynx chrisware.uk, simple as that. It'll take a few moments to load up, and there we go. So you can see how easy it is and how straightforward it looks, and how similar it looks. Like if you can look at the websites side by side, they do look rather similar. And then you can of course navigate using the keyboard there. I just use page up, page down to scroll through the pages of the website. You can see all my social media links there, and yeah. So it's actually a rather it's a rather comfortable way to browse the internet through the Lynx browser. It is a little bit unfortunate that there are so many websites that are so heavily reliant on bloated JavaScript and huge images and incredibly inefficient ways of laying out content, that Lynx doesn't necessarily work with huge swathes of the World Wide Web. But if you really want to see how well a website is put together, seeing how it looks like on the Lynx browser is a pretty good way of measuring it, in my humble opinion. So anyway, that's just a little bit of a ramble about my NeoCities website. I thought some of you guys might appreciate it. If you want to get a NeoCities website yourself, it's just as easy as going to neocities.org. Yeah, if you want to sort of get back to basics when it comes to web design, it is the place that I recommend that you go to. There are, of course, other options. I know that some of you folks do use I think there's like GitLab provides some like a functionality where you can actually put together a website using HTML code yourself as well. But for me, this is both straightforward, pragmatic, and it ticks all the boxes that I like myself. In fact, what I can even do is I can just press Control and U, and it will throw up the actual code of the website itself, and you can really see how human readable it is as well. So so there we go. And just before I leave you, I just want to give you guys a bit of a brief update on some of the chat protocols that I've been playing around with. I think I might have mentioned it in a couple of videos ago. I just wanted to remind you guys that I have an IRC channel. It's over on Freenode. It's #ChrisWare. I think there'll be some information about it down in the description below. It's worth checking out if you want to hang out from time to time. It's going to be the place where I spend a significant amount of time going forward, at least in the short term, just sort of giving it a bit of a run through its paces, because again, it's one of those protocols that I actually really quite like, just based on its simplicity. It's one of those protocols that is basically plain text only for the most part. I think that there is some text formatting if you're particularly adventurous, but really, it's to me, it's getting back to the roots of the internet. And of course, IRC predates the World Wide Web by a couple of years, and it's it's just quite fun to check it out again. I know that a lot of open source projects, of course, have IRC channels, so it's not like I've ever been too far away from it, but I've just been playing around with HexChat. It's the one that comes with Manjaro, and I think it comes with a lot of other distributions as well. I've also been hanging around in HexDSL's IRC room. He's the fella that actually kind of got me back into it as a chat protocol, and it's certainly something that I kind of like for a lot of the same reasons that I like things like NeoCities as well, and the Lynx browser. So if you want to check that out, information will be in the description. Thanks guys very much for watching. That's about it from me today, and until next time, I've been Chris Ware, and you've been awesome. Take care now.